Well, dear friends, good morning. It's good to be with you this morning on this 25th Sunday. I'm like, and I'm in the exact spotlight here, right here, in my peripheral vision. Can you see the glare off my head? Are you okay? Okay. I know, I'll just make fun of myself so you don't have to say it out loud. All right, so sometimes, here's where I want to start. Sometimes the scriptures, as you're going through them, you're reading them, especially parables in the Gospels, sometimes it can be a little confusing, right? You read some text and it's like, what are you trying to say, Jesus? This doesn't make sense. And I say this as someone who, this is my job, right? Going through the scriptures, trying to understand what the Lord is saying. And this parable is certainly, it's no exception. That it seems very odd. Like what the Lord seems to be celebrating, what he seems to be commending. What you want to do in all of Jesus' parables, especially the ones where you're kind of scratching your head, trying to figure out what are you saying? You always want to pay attention to the part of the parable where you find yourself saying, wait, what? That's what you want to pay attention to, right? You're going through listening to the parable. You're like, okay, Jesus, I'm tracking with you. I'm tracking with you. I'm tracking with you. You think he's going to take it this way, and all of a sudden, he takes it that way. That's the part you want to pay attention to. That's the part you want to pray into. So this parable is certainly no exception. So let me just recap it, right? So you've got this steward who's managing the finances of some rich man, and he's been squandering the goods. He's been squandering the wealth and the treasures of the wealthy man's possessions. In fact, it's the very same word that you hear in Luke 15 for the story of the prodigal son, where he's squandering the inheritance. This steward, we could call him the prodigal steward, squandering the wealth of this master of his house. So the master finds out what he's been doing, and he's planning on firing this steward. And the steward panics. He's thinking, I'm going to be on the streets. I'm going to have no source of income. What am I going to do? I'm too old to dig ditches. I'm too proud to beg. I can't be sitting on the street corner begging for food. So he concocts this plan. He thinks, okay, I'm going to call in my master's debtors, all the people who owe him money. I'm going to ingratiate myself to them by kind of cooking the books. This is his plan. A little bit more dishonesty, leveling on dishonesty. I'm going to cook the books. So he brings in each one, calling them by name. How much do you owe? 50? Okay, now just cook the books, fudge the numbers, and just say you owe 80, right? That's what he does. He's thinking this will secure my future, right? They'll be nice to me when I'm kicked out of this job. So again, you're tracking with Jesus. This is the story. And then the master finds out what he's done, cooking the books, being dishonest, and instead of having him imprisoned, or instead of having him beaten, or even executed, Jesus says this. He says, then that master commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. He basically looks at him and gives him 2 thumbs up and says, nice, well done, So again, if you're tracking with Jesus, this is the part of the gospel where you probably were thinking, wait, what? Was that anybody? You were tracking and then you thought it? Yeah, this is a wait, what kind of moment. Why, Jesus? Is this the kind of behavior you approve of? You want us to be dishonest in our business affairs? No, obviously not. Obviously not. If that's the message you're getting, Saturday morning confessions after 8:30 Mass. Okay. Obviously, that's not what Jesus is commending. Here's the point. Jesus commends this dishonest steward not because of his thievery or creative bookkeeping. He commends him because he had the prudence to look ahead. He had the foresight to secure his future. He was prudent. It was prudent to look ahead and ask, what must I do so that my future is secure? That's what Jesus is spotlighting. And he makes this contrast, this distinction between what he calls the children of this world, right? The worldly, the secular-minded, people like the steward, people who don't live in relationship with Jesus, right? The worldly, the children of the world, we're incredibly savvy and very prudent and very crafty when it comes to planning and securing our future in terms of investments and retirement savings and 401ks and buying stocks and bonds and investing in gold. And then you got people on the far extreme of this who, These are your doomsday preppers, the ones who are stockpiling food and canned goods and water and they're ready for the nomadic lifestyle when all the bombs drop, right? Securing my future. And this is what Jesus is highlighting, saying, look, these children of the world, there's an imprudence here because you are working so hard to secure a future that is inherently temporary, that's inherently finite. I don't care how much gold you buy, how much food you stockpile, how much health insurance you get, how much life insurance you get. You cannot buy your way out of death. You can't. And this is what Jesus laments. He says the children of the light, on the other hand, those are the ones who are supposed to be his disciples, the ones who've been baptized and illuminated, who are supposed to be living different in this world. He says the children of light live so often just like the children of the world, focusing on these short-term goals of this world, when we should be thinking in terms of securing our eternal future. In other words, living with our end, like our real end in mind. Our real end in mind. Like we need this perspective shift he's trying to invite us into. St. Paul will put it this way. He'll describe it like this kingdom perspective, this mindset that someone lives this life with the kingdom in mind, which affects all of our actions in a prudential way here below. So yesterday at the 4 o'clock Mass, we had this weekend, it was the CYO Fall Athletics Mass, so we had a bunch of our student athletes in their uniforms sitting right here in this section. It was very cute. It was awesome. Took a great group picture afterwards. Anyway, I was very glad that the CYO athletes were here because even before I realized that it was the athletic mass, I was thinking in terms of athletics. Specifically, I was thinking about St. Paul. St. Paul, in his writings, he draws on this imagery of athletes to make this very point, this children of the world, this children of light, this kingdom mindset. Like, what goal do you have in mind? What end are you living for? So St. Paul, he says this. He makes this analogy. He says, do you not know that the runners in the stadium all run in the race, but only one wins the prize? Run so as to win, he says. Every athlete exercises discipline in every way. They do it to win a perishable crown, but we, an imperishable one. Thus, I do not run aimlessly. I do not fight as if I were shadowboxing. No, I drive my body and train it for fear that after having preached to others, I myself should be disqualified. And that's so good. Paul, he's pointing to athletes in the arena, these athletes who are competing. They're trying to win what he calls a perishable crown. Think of in the ancient world one of those laurel wreaths, those crowns made out of leaves, right? And he's saying they are disciplining their bodies. They are acting prudently to try and win this perishable crown that give it a few days, a few weeks, it's going to wither and fade. He says they work so hard to secure this goal, a goal that is perishable, a goal that's perishable. And then he points to us. He says, you though, Christians, you're competing for an imperishable crown. You have another goal in mind. You're supposed to live with another goal in mind, a higher end, a destiny that's beyond this world. And then he says this, run so as to win. Like, here's what it comes down to. This is what I was thinking about this gospel, these different mindsets. Like, the most prudent, the most rational, the most wise thing that we could do is right now, today, utterly surrender our lives to Jesus, to make sanctity, running after the heart of Christ, to make that the goal of our life. To make that the goal of our life. To aim now at becoming a saint. To not put it off and say, maybe when I retire, that's when I'm going to start taking the spiritual life seriously. Like, I remember, you've heard me share my story at various contexts at different points now, but So I didn't go to Mass a lot growing up as a kid. My dad's parents, my grandma and grandpa, every once in a while they would take me to Mass, daily Mass in the summers, and we would go out to breakfast. So I remember being, 7, 8 years old, my grandma taking me out to breakfast, or taking me to daily Mass at St. Mary's in Hudson. Afterwards, we were at breakfast, and I asked her this question about what I noticed about the daily Mass. I said, hey, Gam, I called her Gamma. Hey, Gam, why are there so many old people at church? No offense, old people. So, that was my question, 7, 8 years old. Why are there so many old people at church? And my grandma, she was so funny. She had a real quick wit. And I didn't realize in the moment why it was so funny, her response, but she said, they're all there cramming for the final. That was her response, right? They're there cramming for the final. Look, here's the point. This is not the kind of thing that we should be waiting to cram for the final. No, like, the church just canonized these two beautiful young saints. You got St. Pier Giorgio Frassati. He was in his early 20s. You got St. Carlo Acutis. I think he was born in 1993. First millennial saint. Begin today. Like, I'm talking to the young people at Mass, especially today. I don't care if you're 5 or 95. We should be pursuing sanctity today, that should be the goal to which we are living. And moms and dads, listen, it is your job as stewards of these souls, these young souls, to aim them at these higher goals. To aim them, they're not yours, these children. You are stewards of these immortal souls that God has given to you on loan to say, I want them back. Aim them at an eternal goal. Do not put such an undue pressure on all of the perishable crowns. That's what moms and dads do all the time these days, to get their kids to obsess and focus and stress on all of the perishable crowns that this world has to offer. If that's us, shame on us. Aim them towards the imperishable. So back to our dishonest steward, the one who was crafty and clever and who was most prudent because he was securing his future by acting with his future in mind. That's what Jesus is inviting us to see. He's not a competitor to us. He's the ground and condition of our flourishing and joy. Friends, may we be prudent and just utterly surrender to give him the center of our life and to stop running after so many perishable crowns. Amen.